distinctive a characteristic for most cryptocurrencies is that they're irreversible. And many of you here may be a bit worried about that, but as a merchant who receives cryptocurrency as a payment, the moment you receive it, you can wait a few minutes later once it gets a few confirmations on the blockchain. That transaction cannot be reversed. And so let's say I got paid for $100. Once I get that Bitcoin, once I get that cryptocurrency, it's mine, and there's no fraud department that I can call. There's no chargebacks that are going to come my way 3 months down the line. And so as a merchant, it's much less risky for me to accept cryptocurrency as a form of payment because of the fraud and risk involved. And that's something that you'll see a bit different in most traditional payments. Wires can be reversed, EFTs can be reversed, transfers can be recalled. And I think that would be one particular characteristic that you guys would find interesting.
As an MSB, guys, I'm excited for you guys. You guys must feel like Cinderella right now, because with marijuana-related businesses and cryptocurrencies coming into the space, you guys look a lot more attractive to banks right now. So I think you guys already know the process. You guys had to deal with banks as an MSB. You knew how hard it was to get bank accounts. This is the biggest issues for these cryptocurrency companies, is getting bank accounts, navigating the space, especially in Canada. So you guys already know the path on how to do it successfully, hopefully, and you can work with these companies, and they can help you with some of the technical solutions, while you can help them by how to maintain a business like an MSB or a cryptocurrency business within a banking institution.
Perfect. Hi, Charlene. We're just talking about what traditional MSBs and cryptocurrency companies can learn from each other.
Great. I apologize for my lateness. A little compliance emergency, as I'm sure you're all familiar with. Can you repeat the question?
So what can traditional money service businesses and dealers in digital currency learn from each other? How do we work together? How do we collaborate? Where are those opportunities?
I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity. I think sometimes people struggle from being able to come together, usually sometimes due to competition, fears, and things like that. But like talking about dealing with regulators is definitely a big start. It helps to share amongst each other if you're not, too embarrassed about, oh, we have a regulatory review. The learnings that come from and that can be passed around from what to expect in a regulatory review and what kind of things you can do to prepare better are always good starts. Definitely collaborating on draft regulations is a good thing too. I'm sure some of you have done with the recent updates to the Proceeds of Crime Act, but that's a good start.
Perfect. And if I can just bother you because we have your wonderful brain here now. I had already asked with the rest of the panelists in terms of the draft regulations. I know that I believe Coinsquare submitted some comments. What did you think overall? What should people be thinking about in terms of the draft?
Sure. I tend to speak from and come from the cryptocurrency angle because I'm at Coinsquare, but I also want to point out to everybody when I speak about regulation that there's a lot of changes in there that affect non-cryptocurrency as well, and they seem to be getting overlooked in this hullabaloo over cryptocurrency because with cryptocurrency laws, it's just kind of like adding and virtual currency to already existing laws. So to me, it's kind of old news, but I've been in this industry a while, so it's old news to me, but it might be new news to other people in the digital space. There is one aspect that is new that I hope is getting removed due to all of our commentary, but they've added a new reporting requirement around cryptocurrency regarding the transfers of, and no other country has added that in their law. So like some strong wording around that. But for non-cryptocurrency MSBs, there's new things like the wire reporting rules are being taken away from the last out, first in, and back to you, the person who originally receives the instruction. I think that's a huge administrative burden taken away from very large institutions that have spent lots of money and time on infrastructure for this and are probably pretty happy to get rid of it. But that then puts that burden on to traditional MSBs to file within 5 days all wire transfers of 10,000 or more that go in the country or come out of the country, and that I think is being overlooked by a lot of people. It's scaring me, and we don't even do the wires that would qualify for that yet at Coinsquare. I know the 3-day rule on filing STRs is also making people a bit panicked, but Is there regulators in the room here?
I'm not sure, there will be at some point.
Sure, well, I'll speak for
They
you.
know
I'll speak
people
for
are
you
worried about
about
it.
The current rule of 30 days from the date in which you first detect a suspicion is now being changed to 3 days from the date you conclude on. I don't know if they use the word conclude, but like, that timeline has been played with by every financial institution since the beginning of time. So, you know, I think that's not the one to get too hyped up about. It's, you know, you can play with that timeline when you determine something should be reported, and then it's the pushing of the button to report. So that one is a little less concerning to me than the wire reporting rule. And then finally, if I can wrap up, it's, you know, they've added and virtual currency to every other kind of entity. So if you're a securities dealer, on that one, you're a securities dealer and you take or deal in virtual currency, you now are covered in virtual currency rules. If you're a casino, probably unlikely to occur, but if you're a casino and you take virtual currency, you now are under the virtual currency rules. And but for this one reporting requirement, you should be pretty safe, but it's adding virtual currency to everything. I think that's a good thing, to allow like anybody who wants to get into it to deal in it. But I do think they need to tighten up that dealing in definition, because it might pull in many unintended consequences. They want to be vague, they want to leave it open, but I think that also leaves people like me in a bit of a awkward scenario. Like, what are you? I'm not an MSB. Well, yes, you are. Well, no, I'm going to, back and forth arguments about whose definition you're going by.
Fair.
Isn't most of the regulation that's come out vague so far?
Well, I think regulation probably has to be vague, right? Like, they can't be too prescriptive because it wouldn't capture as much as they'd like, but, you know, they're supposed to be issuing interpretive notes that go along with it, like they do with their existing, you know, regulation. But I think it's incumbent upon people like us to teach them what that is, because them sitting in a room alone trying to figure it out, what is dealing in virtual currency, led to some of this weird definition. So I think the consultations left a good avenue for people like us to input our comments about what it should and shouldn't cover possibly.
Yeah, and I can't emphasize that enough, even from the MSB perspective. I know the CMSBA and Mark and the Advocacy Committee do incredible work in terms of submitting comments when we have draft regulation. But that is something that anyone can do. So any Canadian, any business, if you see draft regulation and it is not what you think it should be, get to a keyboard, send comments. If you're not comfortable submitting them under the name of your business, there are a number of us, so myself, I believe Jennifer at Grant Thornton, that submit comments, and she's in the back and she's amazing. But there are a number of us that will submit comments on behalf of industries as well, if you're not comfortable submitting them under your own name.
Yeah, I think people think, oh, it's not going to matter, like, you know, what's my little voice going to say? But like, I do know with the virtual currency community that enough of us commented back that it has, I think, at least helped, I don't know if the word helped is the right word, but delay some of the regulations from coming into effect in June. They're doing a split now between like half is going to come into effect early and the other half maybe later. So I think your voice can have an impact if, you know, especially power numbers.
Absolutely. Before I open it up to questions from the audience, I have one more question for our panel, which is learning about cryptocurrency, learning about blockchain is often described as falling down a rabbit hole. So there's so much information, so much of it is new. What is your top resource or top couple of resources for people that want to learn more?
I mean, I got started on Andreas Antonopoulos' videos, and he's a really big advocate for Bitcoin and explaining to the layperson what is Bitcoin, why it's important. And so they just going on YouTube, Andreas Bitcoin, and you'll find some really good stuff.
I also follow blog geeks. It might be a little too much information, but I remember when I was just starting out, they have very succinct articles on what is blockchain, what is cryptocurrency, you know, how does this work, what is each terminology, and what do these things do in really plain English and easy to understand. Also, I always recommend to people the best way to learn, and I think you mentioned this when you were talking about how you got involved in the industry, is to go to BlockGeeks or just Google how to buy cryptocurrency and just buy some. Like spend, I don't know, $20. Oh, go to Coinsquare and read it.
Not a salesperson, not a salesperson.
But just buy some because, you know, and this happened to me too. Somebody gave me a piece of paper and said, here you go. And it was some random coin. I was at a party and I actually sold the coin for Ethereum. And then I kept seeing my wallet go up in price last year till it died slightly this year. But it keeps you involved, and then you suddenly, you know, start looking into more and more about what that coin means, what that company does, you know, how it came about, and it's the best way to learn while making or losing money.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a bit of a gamble, but you're right. Like just getting into it. Before I worked for Coinsquare, you know, most of my reading about virtual currency was when I worked in banks or as a consultant. I was like, it's evil and stay away, and it's all drug dealing and it's all terrorist. And that is absolutely not true. You know, there's drug dealers and terrorists in every financial institution, not just in cryptocurrency, but it's not this overwhelming devil that people make it out to be. I think I mentioned this in the last thing I spoke at, so apologies if any duplicate people in the audience, but there's a site I sent to my mother, which is helpful for me, and I thought my mom could understand this. It's called lightpaper.com, and it is the most simple and basic, like, what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain? And I still constantly go back to it for reference, because I work with a bunch of brilliant, young, smart people, and I'm a little older, and not as savvy with the tech side of the cryptocurrency. So I bring the compliance, they bring the digital, and I think together we make a good team, but I have to check myself once in a while too, and be like, what does that mean? So that's been a good resource for me and my mom.
Similar to Charlene, I'm more of a compliance side, and yeah, sometimes I think the customer support people are making fun of me. I don't really know the technology to understand what they're talking about, so I think the best thing to do is to come to as many conferences and meetups as you can, and just absorb what's being talked about. Because I find you hear certain things that, especially if you go to industry events that pertain to your industry, that helps you understand, because you understand your industry, and then they're adding in the elements of cryptocurrency. And you know, if you get enough knowledge, I just say jumping into a cryptocurrency job if you have the ability to do that. Because even reading about it, you're only going to learn so much. It's kind of like a lot of things in life. You can read about it so much. You can read about how to do push-ups and work out, but unless you actually go do it, you're not going to see the results. So before going into Bitfinex, I thought I knew about cryptocurrency. Now I realize I know nothing about the way cryptocurrency actually works in the exchange, but I'm learning every day, and that's the best knowledge, is that on-site knowledge, hands-on knowledge.
Yeah, and before I worked at Coinsquare, well, I've worked there about 8, it's almost going on 9 months now, and it feels like 9 years. It's a lot of work, but it's super fun.
Awesome. And when we post the video, I will post links to all of the sites that they mentioned in case anyone's feeling stressed out about trying to spell Andreas Antonopoulos. We have time for some questions from the audience, I think.